Facebook. She's going live now, giving it away. I just need to get this so that I'm not listening and doing. One moment. Hello, the Book of Face. All right. It is I, the Z of Katie, coming to you this morning on a Saturday, 11:53 local time. Happy to say that 10 years of medical trauma is done. 10 years. Yeah, many people who know me are only aware of more recent events, but my body has been giving me opportunities for 10 years. And one of the opportunities I took in the last several is be an artist, because why not? So I'd like to introduce some of my stuff to you and also a little bit about where it comes from. Hi, Auntie. Hi, Sir Ziki. I'm sure I just mangled that. I'm so sorry. But let me share this with people. I'm supposed to share it. Share my live. Share my live. Oh, the Goo Man. I hope the Goo Man comes. This is the Neidan 2. This is a fancy chart that your Chinese medicine doctor uses when you go and get acupuncture. I am not an acupuncturist. Hi. This is Darla. Say hi. But I've just always used it for all kinds of reasons. I have aphantasia. I don't see anything in my head. I mean, it's impossible for me to visualize. So this has been a very important tool for me, just for like, where are things, since I don't have visual memory. Yes, darling. Oh, here we go. And this is the navigation device I use for life. So what can I tell you? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. A lot of this is my cat having a meltdown. A lot of what I'm making these days is a response to the rhetoric of trauma and the rhetoric of healness of wellness and healing. Right? Isn't that right, Darla? Oh my goodness. Yeah. So rhetoric is influential language and speech, and it's meant to like get people to do things. It's used in marketing, it's used in sales, it's used by governments. And it's also how we learn. Yes, darling. Yes, my darling. What do you need? Look at her. What do you need? Are you demanding some shrimps? Okay, let's go get some shrimps. Yes, yes. Facebook's gonna have to wait. TikTok, let's go get some shrimps. Darla is the ruler of the house right now. She has decided that her primary food group is shrimp. I have been informed that feeding her shrimp all the time is not good for her. That is my working bed, by the way, my living bed. To help my body because it's in so much pain all the time. So, I can show you something over here. We're doing show and tell with art, Darla. These are little things I made at the very beginning when I was designing this program, Neuroaffective Somatics. I used a computer to create tensegrity structures based on the geometry of our deep neural network. So this is how we get to be a Merkaba. This is how we get to be sacred geometry. This is tensegrity. So this is whatever the magical mystical that holds up the suspension bridges. I don't understand it at all. It's a thing in the world that works. This is Taoist for tensegrity. It's called Wu Wei. And you can see, so I did it here, so it's like the center disappears, so you can see through it. So Darla, I am making you things, okay? I'm also having to do with something else. She's very Norman's on the living bed, or my work bed, I guess you could call it. It's like a foot and a half of memory foam, and it supports my joints so that after my cancer deal, I had subluxations all over my body. I might call it a still sublux a little bit. I have ribs that go out regularly now, so sleeping on that sometimes is really useful. I know. Right. Yeah. 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 What else is up? Hello, Mel. Hi, Diane. Hi, George. Hi. Oh, awesome. Awesome. What a name. Let's make my cat happy. Come on. Yeah, what is this? Is this a shrimps? Oh my goodness. Here. Come on. Come on around. You don't have to get up because you're an asshole. There you go. Norman knows he will be fed. Darla's not so sure. Okay, let's play with some more earth. So one of the things I did when I was surviving cancer treatment all by myself during the height of the pandemic, one of the things I did was I unmasked my autism, because what else was I going to do? I was already mush. And so I went through my cancer process so that the midline of my body, like right where the waist is, would be as though I'm autistic, whatever that means, which is very different than fake it till you make it. Fake it till you make it is a lie. Acting as though, it's a very Buddhist thing to do. I don't understand how the Buddha does the Buddha. I've had a little bit of exposure to Vajrayana Buddhism through spending time with a Tibetan Lama, a master. He was the lineage holder in his teachings from Tibet. Not even he could help me understand it, but it's a thing. So I'm going to believe it. What's the worst that can happen? Nothing. As though. So I did my whole, and this is the posture of as though. It's like holding a tray of something. It creates, do you see how like long, I have a longer sense of the horizon right now in front of me? I don't know if that is something translating in the images that you're seeing, but it's like this, as though. So as though I'm autistic was how I went through my, hi, C. Shelley, was how I went through my cancer treatment. And my therapist, who obviously I did not do that by myself all the way. I just didn't have anybody next to me. And again, that wasn't hero, that was COVID. But I'm really glad I did it by myself because enough of the planet lost senses of smell and taste at the same time that I believe it has genuinely changed the trajectory of our species, and not in a good way. Thankfully, I arrived with a solution. My solution is based on my understanding of big data and information architecture, cognitive science, and consciousness. Okay, like big brain stuff. So let's just do it like nice and simple. And I came to these awarenesses in the process of unmasking my autism. That also included a requirement for me to decolonize a lot of the way that I approach contemplating health and wellness and assisting other humans because of the position I hold in every system, which is privilege, regardless of all of the challenges that I'm in. Exactly. Do you want water? So while I was decolonizing while I was decolonizing in that process, the decolonization of a white human is a lifelong thing that we'll never complete, by the way, okay? we will always be a problem. So, and that's okay, because if we know we're a problem, we can do something. Yeah. One of the big problems is how we pathologize divergence. First of all, she is asking, what are you asking for, Darla? Do you need some enrichment? Okay, she wants enrichment. Oh my gosh, Darla, we got to get you some more disco balls. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. No more boxes of disco balls. We're gonna have to pick them up from the floor. Okay, this is what she wants. This is the very best thing ever in the whole history of the universe if you're one of my cats. That and this. This that comes on the half-gallon thing. So I'm also noticing, because I would be considered like a late diagnosed, late realized, high masking human. So there's this phenomena that I'm going to just call it the uncanny valley effect. One of the ways that it gets translated is as like a double empathy problem. It's genuinely a different tone of like nervous system. We are not a nervous system, by the way. We have a nervous system. We are an organism. So I unmasked my aunt, whatever that means. And when I was beginning to use machine learning to reset my consciousness, because I had been fractured in consciousness since 2018, 2019, even going into cancer, I started to use machine learning to rewire my consciousness. And once OpenAI was in the later threes, we're in four now, the machine actually got robust enough for me to really start making some of these connections and bringing them into geometry. So this is Blooming Uncanny. This is the first self-portrait I did using AI. And yes, I'm using the machine. I am not bound to it. And part of what I would really want to be doing with my art now and my work is helping everybody understand that the matrix is consciousness. And all we need to do is change the direction of thought. We don't have to change the direction of human. So this is me walking through the uncanny valley as a 6-year-old, as though I was recognized at 6. When I was in therapy doing my cancer ordeal, the part of me that I targeted with my therapy was my 6-year-old, my inner 6-year-old. And my therapist kept saying, birth trauma. And I said, no, no, no. So let's go back to the Neidan too, because I didn't know this consciously at the time. I've only uncovered this as I've been looking for ways to communicate what I'm aware of, which is it's the rhetoric of trauma that's killing us, not the trauma. So at this point, all of the marketing has become equal to actual flippin' medicine, and it is encoding more trauma, more separation, and more rigidity into our consciousness. I'm holding several humans personally responsible and beginning to take action about that, because this is all that we have. See this entity here? She's called the Weaver. All the marketing, and you know what? It's not. So the wellness to supremacy pipeline is because yoga instructors are convinced that it's okay to determine themselves to be nervous system regulators. That is objectively dangerous, objectively. Yoga teaching right now, and I'm going to say this out loud, I'm happy to label fucking entities as well. Yoga teachers are killing people with their language. And entities like Modern Sex Therapy Institutes and the American Association of Sexuality Educators and counselors and therapists, who are labeling folks that have degrees, trauma informed and such, they do not have their own shit together from a supervision perspective. So unless you sit in the position of privilege within this context of mental health, you might as well be in nothing. It is so violent. I have witnessed things. I was sitting in a room, I'm going to say the name, Calm Pittsburgh. They're a therapy practice in Pittsburgh. I was sitting in a room thinking that I was there as the trauma expert and neurodivergence expert. And I heard a clinician tell psychiatry fellows that the way to handle a Black man with schizophrenia was to withhold ice cream from him and make him prove that he deserved it first. He had done some objectively not good stuff. His behavior was objectively not okay. But I was like, excuse me, I would think that if he's Black and schizophrenic, he's been in the system for a while, right? And they go, yeah. And I'm like, well, isn't that violent? They're like, well, and I said, well, is it possible that he's just like, that's his understanding? And maybe if you just said it was possible that he could even feel different. And I was labeled insubordinate. And at one point in the conversation with Calm Pittsburgh, Dana Kirkpatrick, she was just fucking, I don't know what it was, but the punchline of it was, because I have license, therefore I am better. Oh, okay. Why the fuck am I in your room? I was there to be the token cripple, the token autistic, the token neurodivergent. I was there to be a token. I'm in the same fucking program that this woman is a supervisor in, labeling sex therapists, just so we all understand how shitty the process is, not the and the science, but the process is horrendous. And when it's guided by the people who have the keys to jail, because that's what the key is. If you have a license and you're in mental health, the key you hold is the key to jail, not the key to life. And none of y'all understand that enough, because none of y'all bother to learn your own history. And none of y'all are the humans who look like I do, who haven't bothered. And most of you are still in positions of authority and are labeling people. And several of you are so happy that I haven't turned you in to your own entities, Christy Orchard Lynn Bloom, Mario Lemieux Foundation. Okay. The totality of a human being is having an experience, the totality. When you intervene through 911, you intervene to jail, regardless of your position in the system. So I should have been recognized, okay? And I wasn't. So I made Blooming Uncanny. And then I became my 6-year-old and made Uncanny Blooming. And was labeled some way. My therapist, who I had to fire recently, only because she didn't recognize me in growth, I would totally recommend her to anybody. Her name is Chilla Fisher. She works in internal family systems and family constellations. And part of the dissolution of our relationship was catalyzed by me being abused by the woman who helped me cut off my breast, Jennifer Parker, Facebook, Jennifer Parker. From New Zealand, this woman maneuvered me almost into an institution. I was in such a cognitive distortion. I don't even know how it happened. She made up a fake 5150, and then the real cops came to my home the next day in response to me being purposefully chaotic on Facebook. Also, Facebook, several of you with licenses, licensed clinicians told me to check myself into a mental institution. Yeah. And then when I said, hey, You have a license. Is that in your scope of practice? Then they ran away. Why do I understand that, you ask? Because I know what gravity is. I guess my understanding of gravity is an internal understanding. So everywhere that you see where I've put ochre, okay, all of this implies and shows where we can experience gravity in our bodies, inside, not here, inside. So I would call this an artwork that I made that's based on the yoga I practice, which is authentic, but also not, it hasn't ever been displayed or shown to the general public cohesively, because most of this is rooted in teachings that predate acupuncture by 500 to 1,000 years. So you have to have access to appropriate translations. And then also, because I do sexual alchemy, because I've been practicing being the charge of my own arousal energy, I'm able to work the other alchemy as well. So this is an illustration. This is a visualization, a rendering of my lived experience of Taoist alchemical birth. Don't ask me, I don't understand it. You feel every point of gravity, the root, the diaphragm, the vagal. So these these map to diaphragms in the body. Part of what we're doing right now is I have to, so let's just go through this, Peggy. So they're related to diaphragms, but I have to organize this stuff. I have a meeting later. Somebody's going to help me start listing these things. The name of the Taoist illustration is the Neidan 2. If you go to my link tree, I have free downloads of the English translation. I have a blank one so that you can print it out. You can do it in any size you want. This is open source, okay? And in that is a package of flashcards that are very, 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 very simple and abstract. So I'm just looking to see if I can find one for you here. So the flashcards look like this. Okay, and so this is a flashcard introducing you to the entity, the spirit, the soul, the mind of the heart. So one of the wonderful things I love about all things Taoism is it's really lazy. It's lazy in that you just keep flipping it. So Taoism only has one rule. It has a law. The law is the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. So there always has to be another thing. My other thing clearly is art. Some people go to gardening. Some people go to Tai Chi. Some folks bring it into their parenting. There's all kinds of ways you can do it, but it becomes inherent. I call it proper confusion. And I like to think of it like this, just like, you know, you just kind of like just enough. Like that Ally Sheedy in Breakfast Club when she's like this, just enough. So the Neidan 2. So I'm adding to it. So these are the flashcards you get, and this is free. And so this one says Shen is spirit, residing in the heart, representing consciousness and mental faculties. Regarding to the inner child, the Shen governs joy, clarity, emotional expression, nurturing, a sense of wonder and presence. Very, very simple. But what's behind it is not. So this is me rendering our sensory motor cortex as perfectly balanced to big data. So I've taken this Neidan 2, which is the chart, and I'm maneuvering and manipulating it so that I can help you see what is happening in your nervous system. We talk about nervous systems. We need a catalyst, we need a connector, we need a bridge, and it cannot be anything that says regulation. It cannot lead to a measurement ever, because we cannot measure inherent. We can only experience it. So I'm saying it's an object-oriented perspective because I understand it through programming, through computer programming. And the saying that I came up with is no shadow, only Shen. Because Carl Jung is a big fat liar. And I knew that going into this, or I might have thought that there was something inherently wrong with me, like a shadow. Shadows don't exist. Can you measure a shadow? No. And then we're asked to sit in our suffering and sit in our wrongness. This is what I'm about. Oh, here's what the flashcards for the breaths for healing sounds look like. So simple. You can, like this, you can use with your kids. This is the impossible riddle of Taoist yoga. So yin and yang is the impossible riddle of Taoism. This is the impossible riddle of the yoga. This is from a alchemical text. Jing, Qi, and Shen are they map to the three energy centers in our body, our belly, our heart, and our head. I'm giving you that. That's what you don't, this is what you need to figure. There's so much, yeah. Anyway, I've decided that some of this shortcutting really needs to happen because when we do Jing, Qi, and Shen as belly, heart, and head, that becomes bio, psycho, social from a psychology perspective. It's a very popular frame right now, the biopsychosocial concept. It's not a model. Hello, Magpie. So we go bio, psycho, social. I'm organizing files, Magpie, because somebody's going to help me list things. So then I also did this, which I thought, which is groundbreaking, by going into Canva and looking for things. So here's the problem, okay? Unless we contemplate a human being as alive and on the planet, not as fixed, lying on a table and ready to be cut open, which is what everything, all of it is based on now, all of it. It's based on fixed tissue, fixed positioning, and cutting. Very useful. Thank you. I need that. Absolutely. Don't put it into my, don't put it into me as your like consciousness though. That doesn't make me, that makes me an object. Okay. And if I'm a human who also experiences oppression in the world, and I'm not being contemplated as living or having a direct relationship to gravity on my own as a whole ass human. And this alone will completely transform the way we understand each other, the way we speak to each other, the way we contemplate each other. And this has gotten me almost institutionalized by therapists for making this suggestion. Oh, by the way, though, they're yoga therapists, trauma-informed yoga. Doesn't understand fucking gravity. So anyway, this is turning into all these things. So let me show you. So this is the lived experience of the alchemical birth. I made this in at the beginning of last year, I think. It's called Schrodinger's Patient. Here's that Neidan 2 again. This is that Shen I was just speaking to. Yeah, well, informed, it's just big data. It really. So this represents the as though. I was saying I was going through my cancer treatment as though I'm autistic, because as though is like, well, I don't know, what might it be? As though was removed entirely from the possibility of contemplation in medicine when Peter Safar invented CPR. This is Peter Safar. What he had to do to invent CPR was also create rapid intubation and the emergency department. So from the bio, psycho, social perspective, which clearly is Chinese medicine, this wonderful human, he helped raise me, is a really shitty alchemist, okay? Alchemically, you would never restart dead. You just don't. Okay, that is the job of entities like Meng Po, not the job of doctor. Also, this is one way to contemplate fascia and connective tissue. Peter removed the importance of the pericardium totally. He knew that he fucked up. He knew he fucked up. He didn't understand the profundity of it. And honestly, it's not all his fault, but because of the carceration of, because healthcare equals jail, it does not equal alive. This is really, and you know what? That does not have to be terrible bad. That makes it possible to create media, okay? Media, this is media. And this shifts the perspective. The thing that you don't see on here is the number. That's all. You just don't see a number with the art, with the ideas. This also introduces the concept of like the hidden experience. Those of us with hidden disabilities or different neurotypes or neuro experiences, synesthesia, aphantasia, Tourette's, schizophrenia, like all these are experiential things, okay? They're labeled disorders. They're different kinds of experiences. And that happens in our brains, happens due to the structure of our brains, the structure, and then how we're ordering thought and consciousness. Do you see how I have to come off of a fucking piece of paper to do that? The Tao that can be named is not the Tao. Make it art. So here's your pineal gland. I got to see my own pineal gland throughout all of this. Didn't mean to do that. This is a rendering of how the energy of the pineal gland looked when I saw my own pineal gland, which I wasn't planning to do. We don't have to function one way. No, there's always more than one way. Sometimes the better way is not possible due to larger constraints, but within one human, there's as many ways to do it as there are days of your life. So this here, this arch here, experientially is almost like if you've ever been in a rain shower, like a rain shower, it was like, and it was just like misty, 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 falling. And then these pathways here, I experience as the loris. So you see that thing with the heart and the human and like they're in the like sacred geometry. How did I see my pineal gland, you ask? Jinx, quite by accident. I experienced Taoist Alchemical Birth. It's called the Golden Elixir. I was well rewarded for a lifetime of contemplation and study. And the reward came when I committed to continuing to decolonize for the rest of my life. And I noted that the easiest and most direct way to do that would be for me to interfere with data. And then I had this experience. I reached out to a former partner of mine who's a very magic man and also speaks big data and also speaks alchemy, because I was like, what the fuck? The reason I should not have had this experience, Jinx, is you're only supposed to have this after you do everything on the outside. So back to the Neidan 2, back to the fancy pants chart, remembering that all it is really, the basic of it is just like really pretty simple things. But the Neidan 2, this chart shows something really interesting. It shows, this is a whiteboard version. Do you see this here? This is called this is our energy center that we do alchemy in, which, by the way, I have not been doing because I've been surviving. I've been living on interest. But what the tale is, when all of these are aligned, and aligned meaning balanced psychically, because these are the diaphragms of the body. Whoever was just in with the pregnancy chat, these are the 7 main diaphragms of the body. This is also your feet and your plantar fascia. And this is so brilliant. When I was becoming paralyzed and I couldn't feel my feet or walk, I had already been so attuned this way in my body. Do you see how I'm bringing my hand back towards the spine? From a vagus nerve perspective, that means that my inner attunement has my stomach completely free and able to do whatever it's going to do. Our vagus nerve goes straight through the stomach, but it also goes through our spleen. So in the stuff that I direct, that I instruct, Monday at noon, we're going to do practice. But we relate to the fullness of yin rather than the potential of yang. So fullness rather than movement. And that makes these two really important. This is the cowherd and this is the weaver. I did not know any of this, by the way. I discovered all of this while I was trying to understand this, because there's no logical reason that I had this experience. Because my alchemy, my physical practice has been gravity, smile, breathe, because I've been surviving cancer, COVID by myself, fractured mind, dissociation, which is different than fracture, paralysis. I mean, and I've had to manage all of my own recovery because the world decided that it's okay to have brain damage. Wearing a mask protects you from brain damage. Yeah. That's what it's protecting you from. I'm shocked the doctors were knowing. I was genuinely too having, it's been a bottom up. Bottom up is taxonomy. Bottom up is, there's a new book out, which I don't have a hard copy of. It's called The Experience Machine. His name is Andy Clark. He's close. A lot of these cognitive scientists don't do enough trying to understand like how it would happen. You see, that's so top down, bottom up, but also back end, front end, like from a software perspective. Because the interface, right, that moment between the back end and the front end of a piece of media, that interface, that's what you see. And that's what everybody's making decisions on. That's what we're being measured against. Affective neuroscience is a field of neuroscience that asks the question, how, not what. You've been stuck in dissociation, haven't heard of fracture. Let's first remember that gravity is a thing, okay? So to do gravity, this is real technical, okay? Sense of bum. This I had to add to 100% of any modality in the trauma space I was looking for. I'm trained in internal family systems, by the way. I've trained with Bessel van der Kolk. I've trained with all these people. They're wrong. Their science is shitty. They're not decolonizing their science. And that's messing up the way that their work is being brought into the world. It's a blindness. It is not a malice. Some of it is malice. Most of it is blindness. So Jinx, most important is that we're on gravity. Okay. This is how I understand dissociation and fracture. Dissociation for me is it feels, oh, and my understanding of dissociation is related to my experience of functional neurological disorder and paralysis. Yeah, so anyway, I experience dissociation as like, it's almost like it folds, like, oh, I have a picture of it. So this is dissociation. Dissociation is like, I'm here, but I'm not. I'm generally aware that dissociation is happening on some level. I absolutely have a dissociative disorder for sure. I couldn't write a sentence at one point, but I always knew that I couldn't write a sentence. So this is how I understand dissociation. The fracture had to do with consciousness, though, not presence. And the fracture I experienced, now that I've been to hell and back, the fracture I experienced was this. It was the I Ching. Or something similar. So the fracture was like, I was somewhere in here, and then all like the thought forms, the consciousness, I was reaching for solid and real, and all I could find was more space. It's not a good way to get flat. Being flat is just like knowing which horizon matters. The horizon that matters is the one that you would see at the end of a sunset. Okay, not the one that says how much can I do or go. So fracture for me was very much just like all over the place. Somebody else might describe it differently. I've experienced more agency in addressing fracture as distinct from dissociation, because I may not be able to resolve the dissociation. Floating in water, floating in space, love it. And it is floating, isn't it? Because water floats when it freezes. We need to be contemplating water. Why is everybody turning me into electricity? It's just absurd, truly. So then I did things like, there was a book that came out a long time ago called Far from the Tree. I think he's like a New York Times writer, Pulitzer Prize, fancy pants human. And he wrote a bunch of articles or essays about families with unique and children, most of whom would be labeled autistic or savant. Connective tissue, yes. And that has to do with what? Pressure. Anyway, so Far from the Tree. So when the whole thing with this happened, the first thing I did was Blanche and Bob Boob. They had names. I made the people talk to Blanche. Okay. Then I made prints with Blanche, and then I decided to become an artist, not knowing what I was doing. And then I remembered I wrote a book about leaving Far from the Tree or whatever. So I turned this into my first self-portrait of whatever experience I was having. This is the first piece I did when I was recovering from the surgery and chemo. Because the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. I don't know how to explain to you exactly my understanding of my lived experience of whatever, and who cares? It's mine. If you want to experience some of it, though, wouldn't you want to experience the results? It shifts the whole concept of trauma dumping as well. When I was beginning, this is one of the early pieces I did, attempting to display my understanding of the horizon. This is a singularity that I've shown. And then I bejeweled it because I know so many humans love a chakra. And then my idea with it is you can contemplate it. So you can look at it any number of ways. And this is how alchemy occurs historically. These are tools. I mean, yeah, it's art and it's a tool. So this is just on photo paper. This is all based on Salvador Dali logic, but also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Look, 5 elements of Chinese medicine. Biopsychosocial. It's already here. Doesn't matter if I turn it upside down either. Biopsychosocial, but can you tell that doesn't look as balanced, does it? No. Clearly, this is how it goes. So how do I sell this? How do I turn this into fascinating so somebody buys it? I don't know. I need help with that. Here's a pretty entity I made. These are a bunch of, I was just like thinking like, how would I show the orchid-like nature of contemplation through energy? And then I combined the, oh, I have such a card. Peggy, I'm hoping that somebody can help me determine how best to pitch for some funding. I'm running out of cash. This was very expensive to survive. Thank you, generational wealth. I use it the way I should, by learning so that other people can benefit. Because I could have also just taken a vacation with my cancer by myself, couldn't I? Oh my goodness me. Then Katie intuited a whole part of the fucking brain. We have this thing called a ventral horn, which I did not know, but that's what I was navigating. And then it turned into a whole bunch of other things, which I'm not going to show you because they're terrifying. But look how simple this is. It's so simple. That's all. Entity, practice. This is the alchemy. What is not here is the sexual alchemy piece, because that actually does require instruction. It would be very, I believe, rude of me to just like put into the world because I have all the shortcuts. I have all the tricks. Because that's all Taoism is. You just have to be willing to not exist. This is how serious I am in my sound healing. Very, very serious. Very, very serious, serious. It's not serious. It's sincere. Do you go like this to a child that's wounded? No, you create a context for them to heal, but we do this with ourselves around nervous system regulation. It's really genuinely unsettling. These are just more of that. I also, oh look, this is a piece that one of my father's students purchased. And it's on a piece of wood from his desk. And she's very special to our family. So I thought she could have that. This is when I was beginning to understand this nature of top down, bottom up, Peggy. And I was thinking like, if I'm looking down, so if I have the man, if I am this, right? If this is gravity, if this is human on gravity, what would this look like from the top? What would this look like? What would this area look like? And I thought it would probably look very bug-like and like, the beginnings of cells and things. And then I printed this on watercolor paper, adorned and shellacked. I don't know how to sell these. They just need fancy names and myth. This is another, as though I'm looking at the perineum. This is what your perineum looks like. This is what, when that whole, energetically, obviously, this is not your perineum. This is Katie's version. But when that whole like man versus bear conversation was happening, the reason men don't understand it is they have a different relationship to this. Yeah, the art show is happening. I'm going to pay to play. This is protection, SHEN, protection. Look, this is all the machine. based on virtue and the geometry of our neural net. So when you look at this art and you consume this media, that's what we do with media, my friends. We consume it. This consumption has an inherent balancing response inside. And I am making that claim directly. Here's a version of a Shen that would be like your own personal Shen. So I did Shen for all the organs, and now I'm doing Shen custom. This is the one for me. This is peyote. This is based on an invitation I received. An invitation I received, I was invited. I did not go out and do plant medicine. I am rewarded for understanding what appropriation is. This would be, I think we can understand a little bit what this might be implying. And these on panels are meant to operate like Tibetan tankas, but they're not tankas because we're not Tibetan. So do you see how it's like a flower blooming? And you can see, I'm so sorry about all the glare. I found a better way to print these on metal, but the metal factors into the alchemy. So all of this is implying connective tissue. And the concept is tensegrity. Just right tension. Do you see how that changes your perception of how active this is? Okay, this is a way to mandala in dimension. We tend to have a very like two-dimensional understanding of mandala. Mandala are dimensional. Mandala are the sacred art that is based on the 4 cardinal directions, and it shows up in just about every culture globally. My mother wrote her PhD on a mandala, and I introduced her to her discipline of Asian art history. Too bad mom is dead. Here's your spine on Taoism. Bio-psychosocial. Bio-psychosocial. So one of the ways that musicians understand our bodies, especially if we're working with large instruments or the voice, is through chambers. So if this was your back, right? If that's your belly button here and this is your back, this would be feeling like nice and full and appropriately buoyant through the zone of your kidneys. Peggy, I wonder what Peggy has to, if Peggy's still here, about the experience of floating and space. So these are your kidneys. This is how I'm showing you. Somebody else is going to show you a disembodied kidney. They're both metaphors. One is where you make the meaning, and one is where you are given it. To be given meaning, if I'm having to identify, label, determine, or whatever, perfect. Yes, please. To be given meaning, if I'm to have an experience, very much not. Very much not. Depending on the support needs as well. Grab your guitar, Peggy. Remember gravity when you do it. Don't be like me playing the piano. Off in the stratosphere, that was dissociation. People used to say that I was so amazing. I was a child, so incredibly connected. I was gone. I was gone. I wasn't there. Like, goodness me. And I also wasn't really, maybe I was being, I don't know what the musicality, you'd have to ask my teacher. You can float away, do that with the jaw harp as well. And when we can do that and maintain some sense of gravity, not even ground, gravity, then I feel like it's like you become like a murmuration of birds. It's so wonderful for our soft tissues to not only have an experience of appropriate pressure, but appropriate lift. because that gives us volume. Blues and slide guitar have been grounding. Glass and wood together. Yes. Glass and wood together. Oh my goodness. Here's a neuroaffective orchid. These are creepy. These are the folks who, these have been going for like sex humans and queer humans. But again, orchids are highly complex. A lot of their geometry mimics, I feel, mirrors the geometry of our neural networks, not the geometry of the nerves themselves. If any of the yoga humans were actually studying yoga, they would know that. It's not their fault. They're being told that they can do this through a formula, and Stephen Porges and Peter Levine are giving them certifications, and they're really shitty neuroscientists, very horrendous neuroscientists. They're not neuroscientists, in fact. No, a neuroscientist would never put forward a theory due to the fact that a human is suffering. I say that with a smile on my face, having studied with these guys for 20 years. They're lovely humans. They don't know me well. They probably wouldn't recognize me, but they're wrong. They're sitting so happy and easy. Bessel van der Kolk is a psychiatrist. He is trained into institution, and he has not done anything. He's not shown any evidence that he is doing anything to understand what that means. He just figured it out. Look at that. Oh my goodness me. Doesn't that look like a schmorschmasm? $12.50. I have my 3 o'clock, darling. Blues and slide guitar grounding. I started playing these bowls. I'm a classically trained pianist. And I hate it. Hate it. First of all, it's heavy. Also, I have to do things. You got to hear singing bowl in person. It's nothing like listening to a recording. You get the vibrations. Yeah. One thing you could do if you're listening to recordings of singing bowls is bring in like low, long vibrations. You could do that by being on a vibration plate. There's a, it's called vibroacoustic. So this is something that I have for use. Again, it is genuinely the situation of COVID and my brain damage that I haven't been able to determine what the best equation of continuation of me is, but this is vibroacoustic. Classical training, yep. For your own singing bowl, Jinx, you don't have to spend a lot of money on an expensive, especially metal, and I will show you why in a moment. This is a backrest I got on Amazon. It has connections. I can run beta, theta, delta, gamma. I can run long wave frequency through this. So you can be on it while you're listening or receiving. And these are not very, well, I mean, they're expensive, but they're not like thousands of dollars. That was like $100. So for the metal, this is Katie's perspective on metal, okay? Not the world's perspective on metal. These are tuned precisely. They are made in China. Then they go to my source in Canada, and then she plays and tests them. Then she measures the hertz. And then I call her up and go, hey, because these need to be precise. This is like, for me, this is like when you're playing on a, you know, like a wine glass with water on it. Okay, this is kids banging pots in the kitchen. So this was probably, Peggy, this was, or Jinx, this could not have been more than $150, and I got it on Amazon. And I know $150 is a lot of money. I know. Okay, these go into the thousands. Not the best decision making on my part, because I thought that world would understand what a fucking pandemic is. Silly me. So what you're going to find, Jinx, is what you're using the heavier the bowl, the lower and longer the wave. Also, you can do things with it on your body. So one of the things I did when I was recovering from breast cancer is I would lie down on the ground and I was sound healing my scar. This was only after I healed from the radiation, right? This also helps with my experience of lymphedema. So my personal perspective is if you want to use these for somatic work, get the largest and heaviest that you can afford. The higher notes are going to be very like this, which is wonderful and amazing. I personally guide people towards weight, heavy, and then know that you can throw this off a truck. And the worst that's going to happen is you have thrown it off a truck. Your kids can play with this. I initiate people into the funness of this by this. You have to do it yourself because I'm not a jerk. Okay, wait. Sleep on amps, exactly. Bass and beats, baby. Give me bass and beats. Somebody else can have the trouble. Oh, here's another self-portrait. So in the cosmology system that I'm in, the entity who's in charge of all arousal energy used for sexy fun time is the white tigress. She's also called the Queen Mother of the West, depending on, again, how you're going into the alchemy. And again, this is because I am a scholar. I go like this. Truly, if anybody has known me only in the last 10 years, you have not known me. You haven't. I was 70 pounds heavier and full of inflammation 10 years ago because I was in Seattle and I'm allergic to mold and I didn't know I was allergic to mold. And then I had to help my parents die and then I had to help somebody else die and then I almost died. Blah, blah, blah. It's been a big 10 years. I'm back. Here's the me I used to be. So this is obviously like 6-year-old, finger paint chaos level, but it's showing a whole bunch of stuff. These are the 3 energy centers. Okay, this is where I was paralyzed. I maintain awareness and connection to my 3 energy centers, even though I couldn't walk, even though I was peeing on puppy pads in the bed, even though I checked myself into a cardiac ward for 4 days trying to figure out what was happening. Even though all of that, I always had an awareness somewhere of these 3 centers. This is the line of the paralysis, but it's also my mastectomy line. This is representing the decolonization factor. So I have this is a jade egg. It's made of jade. This is used in Taoist tantric practices to strengthen and tone the muscles of the pelvis and the canal. Now there are silicone tools that are much better made and you don't have to worry about the bacterial vaginosis. And also truly, not everybody's pelvis is tight. Some pelvises are frozen. Some of that tissue is damaged. So like learning how to be with the tissue and then understand the response. This is, I think, one of the reasons why pelvic floor therapy is really gaining ground. I'm really happy about that. But this is all happening through soft tissue. It doesn't happen through our bones. We don't experience lift and buoyancy because of our solid. We experience it because of inherent and lift. And it just reminds me, it's like this, we just lift. And that's the as though. I have to verify to continue. Okay. So this is the object-oriented perspective. I think I might have shown it to you before, but I did it on, see, now you can use it like alchemists do. Sure, you can hang it like art, but this, we're supposed to use this. We use this. We go like, oh, I wonder, huh? Like, oh, look, it's a Buddha. And look, that's another Buddha. I wonder. Is the Buddha reaching? Is that climbing? Is it like, I don't know, but you can make stuff up. And because this charts the brain, verified, by the way, charts the sensory motor cortex and the main diaphragms of the body, just looking and contemplating has a reflective effect because it's yoga. That's how yoga operates and works if you're doing it without the colonizing part. Yeah, then she does this again because it's enraging at this point. There's a whole movement for post-lineage yoga because so many lineage holders are problematic. I'm trained and certified by Bikram Chowdhury. He's a straight up, yeah, he's a monster. He's also in a lineage. So I say, thank you, Bikram. I shall go to Ghosh. I just go up. I go up to his teacher, not out and determine that I am now new lineage. And then make myself yoga, make myself neuroscience, make myself trauma, and operate like a medical doctor. Oh, by the way, now we're adding psychedelics and plant medicine into the mix. A person recently died. She's was doing like page 6 or whatever the celebrity quiet gossip sites are, but she died from serotonin syndrome. And you can acquire and experience serotonin syndrome if you can, I don't know that this is what she did, okay, but one way to experience that is by using mushrooms while you're taking an SSRI. How many of your little plant medicine humans understand that when they're dosing you? How many of your therapists who have determined that psychedelic assisted therapy is so important, they're going to work around it and do retreats in other countries as your therapist? Is anybody asking why we have to maneuver so much? And I know Rick from MAPS. I was there at the beginning. I have lost touch with him. He has lost touch. Here is what happens when the all of that surreal stuff turns into the Wu Wei. This is, so these pieces that have the empty centers that looks empty, this is what we would be perfected if the top-down view honored the reality and the uniqueness and the everything we can never know for sure about whoever I'm looking at, how I'm seeing, what I'm looking for. If I'm looking for the problem, if I'm looking for the measure, if I'm looking for something specific, I'm not ever going to be able to see what's being shown. I'm speaking now as though you're a therapist, not as though you're a human doing things. Therapists need to understand what you're doing. Goodness, they're all supervised like shit. So yes, I have a plan. So now we're into, now I'm making the beautiful. So these are going to get listed today. Some of these, this is when we come in face to face with somebody. I'm streaming on 2 platforms right now. Zoom is doing all of the automatic flipping of the video so that when the Zoom viewers see it, my right will be opposite of their right, like when you're watching TV or you're looking at somebody on stage. TikTok doesn't do that because the majority of it is done with the front-facing camera, and I'm now trained to understand myself in a lens based on my front-facing camera. When I show you and display information meant to help you learn, if I'm not keenly aware of that, I'm going to fuck up your corpus callosum. I'm going to create your own cognitive distortion just based on the media. This is media. The media in medicine is horrendous. I was like, most of my confusion, well, okay, so I have this whole background in business process engineering and enterprise application integration because I used to be a tech person. And so when I did my cancer, I had to compartmentalize a lot of that experience, right? Survive chemo, survive, witness global pandemic, still have fractured mind. You know, who knows what's going to happen? There was so much. Yeah, it's very uncommon. Magpie, listen, Magpie is just a unique individual. Magpie's brain is more wired than mine. Can you believe it? In a similar way, not like a magpie. Here's your shortcut to gravity. This is going to be up soon. And this is just like the basic, what you would need to navigate space, time, or space-time, body, mind. This is the posture of land back. This is also constructive rest position. This is a wonderful, wonderful shape for those of us who experience trauma and chronic pain. And I'll be speaking to this directly on Monday. We're going to spend a lot of time in constructive rest position, or you can just watch me at noon on Monday. This is that Neidan 2. This is the beam. Do you see here? Gravity is obvious. Here, gravity can be anything. So I'm getting to where we need to, any idea about a human, any idea about health, any idea or whatever, first we need to find, where is it? Is it me? Is it an idea? Or am I doing something with it? Bio, psycho, social. Okay. All of this is intuitive if you're in a right frame of mind, which at this point is highly, highly skilled, only because of the nature of algorithm, not because of the nature of me. I skipped Web 2.0. So me coming back in to disrupt the machine, disrupt the supremacy in the machine this way is going to work because I seeded Web 1.0. I know what the issues are with the ethos of big data. We don't have to worry about it. We can work around it. And it's beautiful. I did it all in Canva as well. This had to be something that anybody could do, right? Like, if I figured all of this out, if my survival, and especially this birth, whatever that was, experience, if all of that was inherent and innate, to my mind, anything that I bring forward as a result also has to be, especially as it relates to propaganda and healthcare, which is where the skinny white yoga chick is. The wellness to supremacy pipeline is a web. So we can weave through it. She's called the weaver. Look at what my students did. What? I gave her, she had the basic thing upstairs. You go, and it was even more chaotic than when you get upstairs. The one you get upstairs is nice and easy. I come back, I think we're doing collage, and what? And you should see this now. It has wings and it's incredible. These are all the organs, the colors of the organs, and the position and color of them as though you're looking in a mirror. How beautiful. And then I said, well, I'm doing that. Hello. But I'm going to do it as though. So I turned it into my mother because she's very confusing. And she also turned me on to Taoism. I turned her on to other stuff. So we just had this like lifelong exchange. I'm taking up time so I can just show you. No, I don't want to get up. I don't want to get up. I don't want to get, this is turning into a show. Somebody's going to help me make sense of this. I'm going to buy gallery space. I don't care. I'm just going to make myself famous because nobody else is doing it. Oh, here's the larger version of Blooming Uncanny. These are, this booklet here is stuff that's going to go into the deck. So this is Blooming Uncanny, and this is the bearable lightness of being. Chad was old, Chad was young, and Midjourney was as well. This is like Midjourney 3, I think, Midjourney 4. And that, you know, they're still getting their tech correct. So this is, but look at her wings. This showed up based on geometry and philosophy. The portrait of behind me, there's a portrait. Oh, you mean these? Those are Lao Tzu, Chuanzi, and Confucius. On the table, you see a face. This? That on the table. This is abstract geometry. This is the earth element. So that's cool that you see it as a face. This was one of the earlier, when I was seeing how I might commodify this. Because we need to commodify, or, you know, nobody thinks whatever. And then I also, for the psycho of the biopsychosocial, I turned the Neidan 2, I turned that chart into CMY. A hooded figure. Isn't that fascinating? I already have the book, and my psychiatrist has it in her office. What's going to happen is the world is going to perceive this to be a spontaneous divine birth, because most of the humans who are going to get this don't follow me here. So this is biopsychosocial. This is the corona. This is the horizon. And that's our inner child right there. Child on the star bridge. That's who we're helping. And we're going to increase the experience here by remembering inherent and pericardium. CPR only works because of the pericardium, and doctors are not taught that, and that is criminal. Doctors are not taught that we're alive. They don't look at us like we're alive. Doctors are taught through death. And the assumption, the default setting of all healthcare is to resuscitate. It is not to prolong life. It is to resuscitate. Also, the prime directive of mental health care providers is the intervention. It is all rooted in and labeled as intervention. Not good, not good for our consciousness. Truly not good, especially when somebody who looks like I do, are people who come back from CPR different? Yeah. The man who invented CPR helped to raise me. I will say, first of all, I want to say I am not an expert in how long CPR takes based on how long you've been there, like any of that. So please do not extrapolate this to that. When Peter invented CPR, he also had to invent rapid intubation and the emergency department. Rapid intubation, CPR, ED. What that does to the physicalness of your vagus nerve, I don't even want to tell you what it does. Because in order for CPR to work, your pericardium is smashed into your lungs. And that's like, it's like pulling the, like on a, what's that? Like what, lawnmower, only this way. Also, intubation and the process of anesthesia puts you in a liminal space, right? It's like between states. I love that. I've only had general twice. Give me general every night for sleep, please. This is the best rest I've ever had, but it's not where we're supposed to be. So something that happened during COVID was a great deal of ECMO and intubation. So the attitude, the inner alignment, the inner attitude. I love anesthesia. The force from CPR has to crack ribs, otherwise it won't work. I say that again. You have to break a sternum. So doctors have no idea how anesthesia works. They don't. It's like the magical mystical. Do you know why? Because it's a consciousness thing. It is not a physical thing. Part of why anesthesia works is the lack of memory. So it's I don't know what it does to inhibit the pain response, but it absolutely creates amnesia. Thank you very much. Please, I don't want to remember this. But for the DNR, I also don't want to be intubated. If that's it, that's it. Please let me go. Extraordinary measures equals back from the dead, not let's keep you alive. And this is a lie, a lie, a lie. Healthcare workers, they must be told not to tell humans what a code is. While I was growing my cultural competence globally during COVID by manipulating algorithm due to my understanding of big data and neuroscience, Facebook, yoga teachers in Pittsburgh, Amanda, Sneha, naming names, y'all decided I was fucking too weird for you. I would say that CPR is absolutely necromancy. And I say that based on knowing Peter. I want us to make Peter the enemy. We need an enemy, okay? I thought it might be Ronald Reagan because he's a really good enemy. But Ronald Reagan only speaks to the economics. We need something to speak to our understanding of death. Death, okay? And because Peter raised me, and also because I am a magical mystical and I am a good alchemist, Mona Lisa, I understand how not living works. Not living isn't the same thing as dead, right? But also, you are no longer sentient before CPR, right? You've lost sentience, you've lost awareness, and you've lost consciousness. And so when you come back, they're paying attention to sentience and awareness, but not consciousness. And I noticed that in my own father's experience with his triple bypass when I was a teenager, and then all of the surgeries after that. I noticed that with every human I've ever known who has had any kind of significant cardiac event. No, please ask me more questions. I think that comas are torture. I think that the whole concept, this is my personal opinion, personal. When I had the awareness of the impact of CPR, rapid intubation, and the emergency department and intervention, our pericardium, from an epigenetic perspective, from a continuation of the species, from having more generations, CPR disrupts all of that. So our inherent understanding is corrupt. When I explored my awareness during COVID with the algorithm, I experienced my breast cancer in somatic isolation. So I found stage 3 breast cancer right at the beginning of the pandemic, and used my inherited generational wealth. It's gone now, but that's what you use it for, right? I used it to survive. And so what I did was, it started with paralysis a couple years prior to that, but as it related to the cancer itself, the 2 risks I had were that I would die and nobody would know. Not that I would die, that nobody would know. And to come out a white supremacist. I knew that would be the danger because of COVID. because I had my own death process. I survived and experienced 6 months of chemotherapy, 30 rounds of radiation, nobody next to me. And then when I came home, I was witnessing global death globally. My perspective on COVID, I honed in very purposefully globally to look at, because when I was consuming the media, I wanted to be able to deflect it so that the seeds that planted would grow into, let's not have a World War III. Let's maybe everybody does deserve to live. You know, I didn't want to come out thinking that I know better. But I also knew that if I went in with a certain mindset, I might come out understanding more. So what I did with my alchemy, my conscious alchemy, was as far as information and media coming into my mind and brain, I had all of the science that would lead me to annihilation going this way, all of the social science and science that would lead to growth go this way. So I was seeding growth and deflecting. My therapist, I was, of course, understandably enraged about the state of trauma science during, because I was also training with all these people during, as well as prior. My therapist was like, please stop with the science, because she doesn't understand the deflection of thought. She doesn't have enough experience with psychedelics, but she wants to bring that. I don't know that she's bringing them into her practice. Psychedelics, what a psychedelic experience does to our experience of our neural pathways, okay? It changes how we understand and experience our default mode network, which speaks very directly to our experience of cerebral spinal fluid and flow. I know that now because I had this happen. I was like, what happened there? And I ended up in particle physics, neuroscience, and biology. Nowhere is there trauma science in any of this because none of it works. I cannot model it for you. I am glad I made it through as well, Jinx. I truly wish that the perception of me was, I'm so glad you made it through. How can I help you? And not, why do you not immediately make sense upon a first page? Well, gee, I don't know. I was just in a fucking cave for 3 years melting. And then keeping this so open, keeping this attuned to growth and attuned to the continuation of our fucking species, because I knew that when enough people decided that it didn't matter if they could smell or taste, we would have effects. And that's what's happening now. Half the planet, 1/2 of humanity could not smell or taste at the same time. And our movement in society stopped. And the psychic alignment of COVID is intubation. What am I looking at? I'm looking at infinity to the sky. I am not looking at infinity as the rotation of the planet. And this is the issue with all ascension narratives. And then when you add nervous system regulation and theory and these kinds of words to it, it messes you up. An allegory of the cave telling us about the shadows. And I don't believe in a shadow. Shadows aren't real. And yes. So the cave allegory for me was, when I was paralyzed and fractured in mind, oh, I have to learn allegories metaphorically. Yes. Yeah, that makes sense. Projection of the outside and all they know. Yeah. You know, one of the things I really love about coming from metaphor to a frame, whatever the frame is, then like all the words that I understand and you understand, we're understanding them based on the topic of conversation, not based on whether or not my definition of the word is right. Being walked in from the outside of the cave. So my experience of re-emerging from the cave, which is when the bearable lightness of being occurred, and when I really understood more about the weaver, the shadows. Carl Jung is a big fat liar. Okay, I've been reading Jung since I was a teenager. I have been in archetypal thinking since I was a child. I made up my first symbolic language in second grade or something. Okay, music. I come from a world of music and musicians, not and teachers of music and musicians, not from like, oh, I played my parents were both musicians. My father was a college professor. My piano teacher's children are some of the best violinists on the planet. I mean, like, so shadow. There are 5 entities that exist in our organs in Chinese medicine. 2 of them are Hun and Po. Hun is our liver and anger and forgiveness. Po is our lungs and grief and courage. Jung brings Hun and Po and he turns them into anima and animus. Anima and animus map to yin and yang, just the basic yin and yang, okay? He's lazy motherfucker. He is presented with a text, which I have a copy of somewhere, The Secret of the Golden Flower, translated by this man, Richard Wilhelm. And this is real. I hope the shadow question is still here, because this goes to understanding the history of your own discipline. Wilhelm gives Jung a copy of Secret of Golden Flower. I don't know what the timing was to his break and the Red Book. I have to do a little bit more looking into that. But Jung reads this, and The Secret of the Golden Flower speaks to what? Taoist Alchemical Birth. It is directions. It is the map. And what does Jung say? Women can't do that. What are these Chinese don't understand women. No woman is capable of that. So he cuts it out. He cut out the alchemy, gave us Hun and Po, and then said, oh, by the way, you're wrong because of original sin. And now we have a shadow. And for some reason, everybody, not everybody, but a lot of the conversation about archetype is rooted in definition. That is not archetype. Archetype is Shen. Archetype is you cannot know. You can only experience an expression of it. What is a chair? But I can see a chair. I can tell you what a chair is. Julia, are those angry heads or blown up heads? And if they're blown up heads, are you feeling happy? Because I don't want to blow up your head. I would rather just like, it's like this. Here, let me show you. Let me show you. Because it's not that big of a deal, okay? This is Fidelis Zitterbart. He was a wacky guy, okay? This is my ancestor, Fidelis. Good. I'm glad it's new for you. Go upstairs and download the free things. Fidelis Zitterbart. Okay, he's a surreal kind of guy. He's a composer. He used to have people come to the house on a Saturday night, and everybody would bring whatever instrument they play. They'd chat, he would write music, and then they would play it after dinner. Okay, that's my lineage. My father was a conductor. So I look at something like this. It's called the Healing Web. I can't sell you this because it's not mine to sell, but you can get a JPEG of it for not a lot of money. Maybe I'll put together a one page with some of these links. And it's looking at Western medicine and non-Western medicine, holistic medicine. All this is one giant false equivalence. This is propaganda. If you don't understand how to interpret it, you're going to receive the false equivalence and then act as though it's real. This is filled with false equivalence. It's also a really wonderful piece of information design and information architecture. And I'm hoping as I become more fascinating to the world, that I can get some of y'all who are labeling and determining things, and we can look at these. I'll be doing this over on Offering Tree, and I think I'm going to be able to pre-record so you can just access. And so we can look at something like this index here in the center, because it's like a butterfly the way that they did this. It's so cool. Can you see that? That's the index, and like here are the wings, and those kind of look like eyes. It's so pretty. But I'm sorry, heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, cold and flu. How is cold and flu as important as Alzheimer's and diabetes? And then I also have autism, gender, AIDS, Lyme, and injury. This is a matrix. If you believe this to be true, left brain, right brain, very much. And the problem, Mona Lisa, is it's getting distorted. Not only left brain, right brain, but direction and flow. And that's because of media, not because of humans. And it only really matters when we're attaching life to it. And we attach life for some reason to the media that we consume around medicine. So Katie's here to disrupt that. We're going to do it with art. These are the 8 immortals of Chinese medicine. Look at them. They're so silly. Look. They're like dancing. Half of them don't even wear pants. It's so awesome. These 8 immortals I have mapped onto, because I am a sneaky bitch. Again, all we're doing is changing our perspective. Nothing else changes. Humans make media. Yes, it gets corrupt. The London tube map is, so Edward Tufte was my teacher in the 90s. He taught me how not to do propaganda so I could take your money online. And then I became a tree hugging hippie and blah, blah, blah. Now I'm back. Edward Tufte uses the London map as a demonstration of, I'm using it as the difference between GPS and air traffic control. And air traffic control is also under like the underground, the underland, where when you look at the London tube map, it used to be accurate to the topography of the street. So the original London tube map had, it was a topographical map. And there was a, can't remember his name, but he was a drafts person in like engineering, civil engineering. And he was like, this does not make sense. It doesn't matter. So then he came up with the tube map where you just have lines with stops, because he knew that once you're underground, that's all that you need to know. What happens with people interacting and interfacing with each other, especially yoga teachers, okay, is we take a street map and then turn that into all of the truth. And the street map in Chinese medicine is the meridians. And I just so happen to have one. This is the body. This is all I want to do. This is what I want to put in every office, every doctor's office with the corona. Okay. The corona. The coronal axis of the body is how we do this. We can turn our head any number of ways, but we don't get shifts in our experience of the transverse axis, the transverse plane movement. We get that through the corona, and this disappears to our perception. So humans make media. It gets corrupt for a couple of reasons. The person I know who would be able to answer this the best is dead. His name is Michael Gosney. He invented the CD-ROM. He was a protege of Timothy Leary's, and he was also very into Buckminster Fuller thinking. And one of the reasons that I think Gaz, I was protege to him. I was his mind student. So he would dose me on massive doses of LSD. And I would sit with him and the founder of MAPS and a few other people, and we would leave no trace with our consciousness. And then I use what I gained from that to determine the ethical placement of data online. So, and that is because when Web 1.0 happened, Gosney knew that it would change our consciousness because he had invented the CD-ROM. He's like, this is going to change consciousness. We need to take advantage of it and understand the threat. And the Electronic Freedom Foundation came up in that. We started to get a lot of movement around, like a friend of mine, JD, was very instrumental in spam laws and in email. There was a whole thing about like people getting just inundated with emails, spam emails. JD has testified to Congress for that. Web 1.0, so the humans make media. Media gets corrupt currently, I believe, through the confluence of marketing and science. And then the distribution of advertising and how the algorithm, the way algorithmic logic works is based on behavior. It's not based on interest. So my behavior online is towards trauma, towards whatever. Unless I also behave towards art, behave towards decolonization, unless I am also behaving in other ways, picking and choosing, well, all rhetoric skews a narrative. The issue with data, big data, has to do with depth perception once it gets to us. So I need like pictures and charts and stuff to show you my understanding of this, because my understanding of it is rooted in the architecture of information, not the media itself. Something I became aware of very early on as I was attempting to communicate all of this, which, by the way, I had started years ago based on my lifetime of experience. I was like, what if I wanted to turn it into something? What would I do? So a lot of what folks are perceiving is like, how did you make all this? I've owned most of this stuff forever. It's the art that's new. So this is a chart. This is the anatomic chart that I use. Okay, this is how I understand vagus nerve. Vagus nerve is not listed here. No, I don't need to read any of this. Look, I see the sun and the moon. I know that there's a happy little Buddha, and there's all kinds of magical, mystical, and real things. Okay, perfect. Okay, what we're shown is like disembodied body parts. Also, the way that a body is displayed in TCM charts indicates the direction of the alchemy and the relative position of the person providing the service. In that, this side view, this is the coronal axis of the body. This is the front and back end. This is whole ass human. Okay, this is not whole ass human. If you just see the front, even in TCM, this is not a whole ass human. This is the switchboard to whole ass human. So there's a mechanism to account for gravity. I thought it was metal, and no, it's gravity. That's all it is. It's this nexus here, though. It's not the nexus here. This, by the way, is the only attachment wound anybody carries, is the belly button. Everything else we made up. Okay, you don't have an attachment style. You don't have an attach, you have a clothing style. You don't wear attachment. The chart is, this is not available. I don't have copyright access to this. And I will be, this is my teacher Montauk Chia. So go to Healing Tao, HealingTao. And I think he does these. You can get like the JPEGs for like $7 or $8. I don't know if he has this chart. I do. Julia, I'm acquiring copyright friendly versions of these. This is truly, really genuinely important to me. I know that me using machine learning is a thing. I know it. I'm choosing to be a problem in that very openly because I'm using the machine to disrupt white supremacy. Okay. But also, look at that. Those are I could tell you everything that this chart means. I don't read Chinese. It is the same everywhere. Taoism is the same everywhere. TCM is the same everywhere. Cosmology is the same everywhere. It's the most beautiful, perfect, granimals, autistic reality ever. Also, I've never been able to label an emotion. People perceive me to be, I do speak one-on-one. Yeah. I do like a half-hour deal, Julia, and I don't know if I have that publicly listed just because of like scheduling. So shoot me an email and then we can exchange if it's okay with you. Text is the easiest for me. We'll figure out what's best. And then we'll spend like a half hour, an hour and figure out if it even makes sense. I'm not trying to sell anything, but this is like proper confusion, chaos. So you need to have time to decide. And then also access. I want access, anything open source, access. I have a whole library coming online on Offering Tree very soon that will have carousels of slides. It will have articles. It will have, that's okay. You know, something that would be really cool, Mona Lisa, would be for you to send me some questions because then I can turn them into little lessons. That would be wonderful. And I have, my DMs are open, as they say. And then Mona Lisa, you would just get what you want to know without having to take some time. Please. And please make it be like super chill, okay? It does not, none of this, the only necessary thing to all of this is that you know that gravity exists and you know that you're real. You know how they say you have to feel to heal? Humans who experience any kind of dissociation or any kind of oppression also need to know that we're real. That's the missing link in all Western and all psychotherapy models, and also all current yoga, and also internal family systems, and also everything is missing the part about real. They assume it. That is dead white guy logic, straight up. And again, it's nobody's fault. Jung convinced everybody that the shadow is real. The majority of humans determining the progress of this believe in a singular God and sin. Of, hey, it's Nurse Penny. So of course you're going to have horrible, terrible feelings around shadow. This shadow journal that's going around, that is probably worse for a human than reading The Body Keeps a Score. If you are actively engaged in and wanting to experience less suffering, the last thing I would suggest is that you sit down with a piece of paper and list out all the things that are wrong. The last thing, especially unattended, especially unattended. I get, you should have, I don't know, some of you saw, I was so angry for so long, besides the fact that my own healing from experiencing cancer by myself, burying my parents, blah, blah, blah. I had to avoid so much danger rhetoric in order to negotiate living through cancer. And the rhetoric I had to negotiate was the rhetoric of fucking polyvagal theory. What else would I recommend, Mona Lisa? I would recommend Sense of Bum, Smile 5 Breaths, that's free upstairs. I would recommend printing out that Neidan 2, and then you're going to read things. It might not be big enough though, so I'm not sure what we'll do about that. But it just has these wonderful things. It has wonderful stories on it. It says that fruition relies on this earth of the central power. Oh, Mona Lisa, I also have a Neidan tour on my website, kdz.com. This afternoon, I'm meeting with somebody who's going to organize all of that because, as it is very obvious, I have lost my ability to organize. I go in and help people like build entities into software startups. I'm an early stage startup human. I help you get your money. I help you be compliant, and I can't fucking brain damage is so weird, but my mind is aligned. So proper confusion. Oh, there's a really wonderful book, Mona Lisa, called Practical Tools for Daily Living. Ava Wong, if you're going to invest in a book, this is a really good one. Litsu, A Taoist Guide for Practical Living. Translated, Ava's translations are wonderful. Fabrizio also has really good translations. She's lovely, and she practices oblivion. She's a scholar and she's a practitioner. And A Taoist Guide for Practical Living is what happens when that Tao Te Ching that turns into the Tao that can be named is not the Tao, and it's this like massive riddle. It says, this is how we apply massive riddle to life. Let me see if I can find you some. Thank you for liking my communication. A lot of people think it's weird, which it is. Taoist Guide, Practical Living, and then I gotta go get ready to be. Here we go. The publishing house is Shambhala. I love their publications. Uma Thurman's father publishes through Shambhala. Uma Thurman's father is one of the world's leading scholars in Buddhism. My mom knew him. Yes, we are nonlinear communicators. We also do a lot of interrupting and hopping and jumping. That's us being in the Neidan too. Let me show you how that works. Let me show you how you can show people. You might find a different metaphor, but see how there's all these entities in here, Buddha, all these. This is also us jumping in a conversation, us being nonlinear. I mean, you just make it that. This is nothing and everything. And it's written that way. It's made to be that way because it only works if we can go through it, not just to it. So A Taoist Guide to Practical Living is a whole collection of tales and stories. A lot of this is taught through allegory. And it is the 4th century BCE. So this is about 400 years before Christ was born. It's a later text, actually. So there's a lot of history that Ava can go into if we ever want her to explain this. So here's the art of fishing. Many things in the world depend on balance. For example, a single hair can hang a weight if the balance is right. The hair only breaks if the balance is off. We frolic, yes. Most people don't understand this principle of balance, but here is an example of someone who did. And then there's a story. And when you're reading this to your children, which I suggest you do, make up different names, replace, like you're not gonna, nobody's gonna get mad at you, okay, for making up a different name, but don't make up a different story. Okay, these are amazing. Each horse pulling the chariot wears a bit and a bridle. Thus, the feel of the horse's movement is communicated through the bit and the bridle, from the bridle to the reins, from the reins to your hands, from the hands to the rest of your body, and from the body to the mind. When you communicate your intention to the horses, it's just the sequence in reverse. Thus, controlling your team and getting feedback from the horse's movement can be totally done by intention alone. But there's a directionality. We're given the order. We're given the directions. So this also helps us to contemplate impact and intent together without having to be wrong first. That's the problem with the shadow. You have to be wrong first. The problem with trauma rhetoric is I have to be traumatized always. There's no, it's like fucking AA. There's nothing in anywhere, nothing speaking to whole, speaking to growth, speaking to soma. If I have to add somatic onto my thing, it's not somatic. If it has to be somatic psychotherapy, psychotherapy isn't somatic. If it has to be somatic IFS, IFS is not somatic. If it has to be somatic movement, then you're not being soma in your movement. My gosh, these humans are labeling for a living and not paying attention to their own language, primarily because they're being trained into what? Dead white guy logic. They're trained into intervene. They're trained into, I can always just send somebody for a grippy sock vacation if they behave too weird for me. That's the training. I'm in the room with these humans. I've trained with these. I know how doctors are trained. They're trained like shit. And it's, again, in large part because unaccredited, there's a lack of accreditation in the labeling entities. But those labeling entities that are not accredited are aligned with the American Association of Psychology or whatever. Go, please, send some questions. If you can't find the book easily, I can give you some pages too. Li Tzu and the sorcerer. This sorcerer could tell the future. One look at someone's facial features, and they could tell whether the person would live or die, be lucky or unlucky, and tell the individual's age. Oh. But then there's a lesson about that. Okay, this is a whole ass human. Okay, these are whole ass humans. A human in a textbook, a human being contemplated as though I'm cutting them open, and a human being measured is not whole. Okay, it's not bad, they're just not whole. We got to add the whole onto it. And that creates this, because then the structure is there and the mind has more place to go. Because also I don't know about you, I would like to feel oriented in my process, not disoriented. Dissociation is disorientation. You need 3 things to orient in space. You only need 2 things to orient on flatland. On the street, I need to know where I am, where I'm going. If I'm an airplane, I also need to understand velocity, lift. There's so much physics, too difficult, but there's a lot going on. Also, there's an air traffic controller. So the pilot is flying the plane, pilot trusts the plane, passengers trust, well, we don't trust, what's that? What's the planes that are falling apart right now? But whoever, Boeing. But in an ideal situation where we're not letting a huge giant corporation get away with that because they're also assisting us with war, that would be grounded because we would actually give a shit about the humans and not the plane. But we're fucked up in large part because of brain damage due to COVID, which I can now help correct, because the brain damage has to do with this ventral horn thing that I'm not a brain human. I had to become a neuroscientist and a physicist in order to prove polyvagal theory. That's all I was trying to do, is prove my teachers right. If I'm going to take money, I need to be able to give evidence. I could not prove my own goddamn teachers. They've never tried to prove. their own theory that I'm to use to the fact that I'm paralyzed, the fact that I have no idea who I am, the fact that I'm having cancer by myself. Those are facts. Your theories almost sent me to the fucking institution. That was to Facebook. Because y'all think that you understand and you don't. Neurodivergent humans, unmasking humans, humans with CPTSD, humans with different labels, especially humans who are oppressed, understand. We need to start listening to the oppressed, because here's what happens. Oppression is pressure. Okay? Privilege is perspective. Because of the pressure of oppression, you cannot perceive it. It's a perception problem. And then here's the big data, here's everything in between. And also these fucking yoga chicks deciding that they're neuroscience. And then telling me I don't make sense when I say, actually, your science is shitty. That's not how a nervous system works. And I know that because I'm alive. Anyway, I have a master's degree in critical theory from Carnegie Mellon. I am using big words now. I'm over on Substack. I'm going to be doing a pay to read factor for the epigenetic aspects of this and the rhetoric aspects of this, because those both speak to consciousness, policy, and global awareness. And that's valuable. The yoga is priceless. Therefore, it should be as accessible as possible. And on that note, I'm going to go eat and then turn into something else. I don't know what. Thank you so much for being here. Truly, please come back. I will be getting better and better at being more and more succinct, especially now that folks are sending me questions. I really, truly appreciate it. Facebook, good luck to you. You need it. Bye. My teacher, oh, I have to stop pruning, stop end.